Good morning. Sorry about that, and welcome to this community. Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West. I'm Kathy White, and as a member of the worship ministry team, I'm glad to be here leading the service this morning. And welcome to this community of comfort, connection, challenge, and caring. If you are new to UU Church West, we want to give you an extra special welcome. Checking out a new spiritual community is a courageous act, even in this time of virtual church. We would love to connect with you, so please send us a quick email message to visitor@uucw.org and we will be in touch. I'd like to introduce the skillful team of people who have contributed to today's service. Kathy Bradshaw is doing the meditation. Jim Fisher will present our readings today. Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, is coordinating the chalice lighting and the worship for all ages. Christopher and Elliot Zamzo will lead us in the chalice lighting words. Reed Posing will present our Split the Plate organization for December, the Waukesha Free Clinic. Our music is coordinated by Jennifer Nicolosi, our lead music director. The special music today is performed by Dan Schatz. Kelly Bogner, our publications coordinator, is working behind the scenes to manage the technology that makes our service possible. Our pulpit guest this morning is the Reverend Ronald Ballew, who has served 15 churches over the last 20 years. He is an ordained United Church of Christ pastor. Reverend Ballew is semi-retired. Currently, he is lead chaplain for the Black String Triage Ensemble, a group of string musicians who provide musical support at active crime scenes. They performed in Kenosha during the recent civil unrest. Please join in singing our opening hymn, number 156, O Freedom, an African-American spiritual arranged by Horace Clarence Boyer. The words are printed in the RDIB service that we send out each week with our Thursday e-news. Here's Jen.
Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free. No more mourning, no more mourning, no more mourning over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free. There'll be singing, there'll be singing, there'll be singing over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free.
From winter's frozen stillness comes the sparkle of the snow. From the empty chalice bowl comes the flame that fires our faith. Stillness, like the held breath or the pause between heartbeats, is rarely more than a moment. Yet it opens us to the timeless knowledge that forever is present in every moment. It opens us to the knowledge that eternity is here and now. We light this chalice for the power and the beauty of stillness.
I'm grateful to be here with you today. Now, I don't think I need to point out that we are living through a difficult period. 10 years from now, we'll probably look back and see how much has changed. But for now, it's safe to say that in many ways, the world is hurting. Now, when we hurt, we seek comfort. For many of us, that's found at home. Home is at the center of our story today. While the book I'll read in just a minute evokes wholesomeness and nostalgia, it's actually also full of disaster and destruction, but also transformation. More than 75 years ago, Virginia Lee Burton wrote Little House, about a peaceful place far away in the country. Uninvited changes soon surround her. This classic story on the surface is about urban sprawl, but you can also read it as being about more than that, like oppression and injustice, or put more simply, unfairness. Now you might notice that page after page, the main character, the house, the little house, keeps very still. I mean, she never moves herself, of course, she's a house. But while experiencing the changes going on around her, she does have thoughts and feelings. As you listen, I invite you to ask yourself, why does the little house have to put up with everything being done around her and, by extension, to her? The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. Once upon a time, there was a little house way out in the country. She was a pretty little house, and she was strong and well built. The man who built her so well said, "This little house shall never be sold, and she will live to see our great-great-grandchildren's great-great-grandchildren living in her." The little house was very happy as she sat on the hill and watched the countryside around her. She watched the sun rise in the morning, and she watched the sun set in the evening. Day followed day, each one a little different from the one before, but the little house stayed just the same. In the nights, she watched the moon grow from a thin new moon to a full moon, then back again to a thin old moon, and when there was no moon, she watched the stars. Time passed quickly for the little house as she watched the countryside slowly change with the seasons. In the spring, when the days grew longer and the sun warmer, she waited for the first robin to return from the south. She watched the grass turn green. She watched the buds on the trees swell and the apple trees burst into blossom. In the long summer days, she sat in the sun and watched the trees cover themselves with leaves, and the white daisies cover the hill. She watched the gardens grow and watched the apples turn red and ripen. In the fall, when the days grew shorter and the nights colder, she watched the first frost turn the leaves to bright yellow and orange and red. She watched the harvest gathered and the apples picked. In the winter, the nights were long and the days were short, and the countryside covered with snow, she watched the children coasting and skating. Year after year, the apple trees grew old and new ones were planted. The children grew up and went away to the city, and now at night the lights of the city seemed brighter and closer. One day the little house was surprised to see a horseless carriage coming down the winding country road. Pretty soon there were more of them. Then came surveyors and a steam shovel that dug a road through the hill covered with daisies. Then some trucks came and dumped big stones on the road, and then trucks with little stones, and some trucks with tar and sand, and finally a steamroller came, rolling it all smooth, and the road was done. Now the little house watched the trucks and automobiles going back and forth to the city. Gasoline stations, roadside stands, small houses followed the new road. Everyone and everything moved much faster now than before. More roads were made, and the countryside was divided into lots. More houses, bigger houses, apartment buildings, tenement houses, schools, stores, garages. It all crowded around the little house. No one wanted to live in her and take care of her anymore. Now it was not so quiet and peaceful at night. Now the lights of the city were bright and very close. Street lights shone all night. This must be living in the city, thought the little house, and didn't know whether she liked it or not. She missed the feel of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. Soon there were trolley cars going back and forth in front of the house, every part of the night and day. Everyone seemed to be busy, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Pretty soon there was an elevated train going back and forth above the little house. The air was filled with dust and smoke. The noise was so loud that it shook the little house. She couldn't even tell when spring came, or summer, or fall, or winter. It all seemed about the same. Soon they tore down the apartment houses and tenement houses and started digging big cellars, one on each side. They built up 25 stories on one side, 35 on the other. Now the little house only saw the sun at noon and didn't see the moon or stars at night at all because the lights of the city were too bright. She didn't like living in the city. At night she used to dream of the country and the field of daisies and apple trees dancing in the moonlight. She was very sad and lonely. She looked pretty shabby, but she was just as good a house as ever underneath. Then one fine morning in spring, along came the great-great-granddaughter of the man who built the little house so well. She saw the shabby little house, but she didn't hurry by. There was something about her that made her stop and look again. She said to her husband, "That little house looks just like the one my grandmother lived in when she was a little girl, only that little house was way out in the country on a hill covered with daisies and apple trees growing around." They found out it was the very same house, so they went to the movers to see if the little house could be moved. They looked her over and said, "Sure, this house is as good as ever. She's built so well we could move her anywhere." So they jacked up the little house and put her on wheels. At first the little house was frightened, but after she got used to it, she rather liked it, rolling along the big road, rolling along the little roads, till finally they were way out in the country. When the little house saw the green grass and heard the birds singing, she didn't feel sad any more. Finally they saw a little hill in the middle of a field, and apple trees growing around. "There," said the great-great-granddaughter, "that's just the place." "Yes, it is," said the little house to herself. The windows and shutters were fixed. Once again they painted her a lovely shade of pink. She settled down on her new foundation, smiling happily. Once again she could watch the sun and moon and stars, and watch the spring and summer and fall and winter come and go. Once again she was lived in and taken care of. The stars twinkled above her. A new moon was coming up. It was spring, and all was quiet and peaceful in the country. So this story has a happy ending. Taking the long view, justice and peace were finally restored. But it took a really long time, didn't it? I asked you to consider why the house needed to suffer for so long. Shouldn't she have been allowed to continue enjoying the life she already had? And aren't there people in this world suffering similar fates? Having others create hardships that they didn't ask for and wouldn't otherwise need to endure? Now, our Unitarian Universalist principles invite us to affirm the right of all people to have a say in matters that affect them. I wonder if there was some way for the little house to weigh in on the building projects taking place all around her. And also, do we ever move ahead on projects that we feel are good but without involving others in the decision-making? Our principles also call on us to build a world with peace and justice for all. Our little house in the story was deprived of that for quite some time. She was fortunate to have someone come to her aid in restoring what was originally and rightly hers. So I have a couple more questions. Who in our world has been deprived of peace and of justice? What might we be doing that's actually helping sustain that unfairness? And what must we do to help move our entire nation toward wholeness and peace, but sooner rather than later? As you consider these questions, I invite you to join in singing hymn number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. You'll find the words in the order of service sent out earlier this week. And if you did not receive them, let the song fill your heart while you consider how its message speaks to your soul. Jen will lead us.
Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide. In the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side, then to stand with truth is noble when we share its wretched cross. That cause bring fame and profit, and 'tis prosperous to be just. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong. Though its portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, then it is the brave one chooses, while the coward stands aside, till the multitude make virtue of the faith they have denied.
Spirit of light and love, spirit of resistance, spirit of generosity, that which serves as our conscience in this work, that we must do to dismantle white supremacy, to empower the marginalized, to insist that Black lives matter. We have been angered, we have been saddened, we have been pushed to the brink once more. We are also inspired and seem resolved to do better this time, to not simply get to the other side of this moment, but to get there morally healthier, to get to a safer space for Black bodies. Spirit, help us to understand that we each have a role in justice work, for our liberations are tied to one another's. Give us the clarity of mind to know what our individual part is in the struggle, that there are many ways to protest injustice. Help us find our way and commit to it. Spirits, we ask for guidance. Send us strength and endurance. Help us to give our all to this and hold nothing back, for precious lives depend on it. We will be imperfect, rest assured that we will mess up over and over again, and we must do it anyway. May we summon the courage to tear down this system of injustice and get busy creating a world community with justice for all. Blessed be, and Ashe.
A song for Black Lives. He was another young man, cut down in his prime. He wasn't going anywhere, he wasn't doing any crime, but his skin was black. They didn't wait to see. He never had a gun, they shot him dead in the street. Put on your walking shoes, join in and march for change. These walls we've erected will surely come down, and love will win again. She was a black woman driving through the wrong part of town. He pulled her over and he dragged her out. He said, I'll light you up, and hauled her away. They threw her into prison, she was dead in 3 days. Put on your walking shoes, join in and march for change. These walls we've erected will surely come down, and love will win again. We are citizens together, we are clergy, police. We're from every religion and from every race. We've seen too many die, their lives too cheap. Justice and equality, our promises will keep. Put on your walking shoes, join in and march for change. These walls we've erected will surely come down, and love will win again. From Ferguson, Missouri to the streets of LA, for Trayvon Martin and for Freddie Gray, for Tamir and Sandra and Michael Brown, we say that Black Lives Matter, we will not be shut down. Put on your walking shoes, join in and march for change. These walls we've erected will surely come down, and love will win. Put on your walking shoes, join in and march for change. These walls we've erected will surely come down, and love will win again.
Our first reading is from the New International Version of the Bible, from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24, verses 18 through 21. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God redeemed you from there. That is why I command you to do this. When you are harvesting in your field, and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat the olives from your trees, do not go over the branches a second time. Leave what remains for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow. When you harvest the grapes in your vineyard, do not go over the vines again. Leave what remains for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow. Our second reading today is by Carolina Krawarek Graham on white supremacy culture. and why I use these words. A common issue in anti-racism work is the use of the term culture of white supremacy or white supremacy culture, which many people view as charged, controversial, or even deeply offensive. Sometimes there are even challenges / dismissals about it from people in positions of power / authority. For me, the use of the term is a necessity for these reasons. Because it's used commonly by many prominent writers and speakers on the subject of race and privilege, and one cannot actively pursue this work without coming across it. Because it's very uncomfortable for me to read / write / say white supremacy culture on so many different levels, not the least of which has to do with sensitivities around my own national / cultural heritage. So it's my way of directly challenging my own right to comfort. Because when this term is used by someone from the dominant group, in this case white, it is a very different experience, generally less antagonizing, and a bit more difficult to dismiss than when it comes from someone who's marginalized, in this case, someone of color. And it is a way that I exercise my privilege toward laying groundwork for others' voices. And lastly, because I have been asked to use these words by people in oppressed communities, both directly and indirectly, because white supremacy culture most accurately and succinctly describes the / their harsh experience of systemic discrimination. It is one of the ways in which I express my allyship. Here end today's readings.
Good morning, and thank you for letting me come back to share a few words with the congregation this morning again. As I was getting ready and working on my notes, I was thinking about there's not much that we are excited about in 2020, but I believe that many people still are anticipating whatever that is coming for them. For those people that are dealing with COVID and other diseases, the vaccine, they tell us now it's coming. So I was just wanting to focus this morning and say that we all have something that we want to be coming, and we have to be thinking about that and staying focused on that. This morning I want to spend my remarks on the importance of working for social justice as opposed to waiting for it to come. We've had a year that has been extremely burdensome on so many levels with the COVID and with people dying at such an alarming rate. But there's been another disease, another problem that has been taking over our country all of this year in 2020, and that is the continued violence against African Americans, especially African American men. We've seen that increase in our country so much this year. And I say to you this morning, as we are waiting for whatever that is you're waiting for, some people are waiting for somebody to come home. Some people are waiting to get that new job. Some people are just waiting for things to change in their life. If you put the waiting in the context of the lives of African Americans in America today, we've been told for over 200 years that if we wait just a little bit longer, things will change and it will be all right. If we wait and be patient just a little bit longer, things will completely change and the racial oppression against us will not exist. Well, my friends, I want to say to you this morning that we have to continue to work for what we want and not just wait for it. The Black Lives Matter movement is an example in America of something that's not going to go away. Not all of the things that they do I completely agree with, but one thing that I agree with about Black Lives Matter is this consistency. They're staying in our faces. They're staying on our highways, on our streets, and staying on point, because we have to have that. But this morning, there's a couple of points that I really wanted to share, especially about, since we're going to have a change of leadership in the White House. And I want to talk a few minutes about the post-Donald Trump era. We're not going to have him in the White House forever. He's been there 4 years, and I've heard people say, both European Americans and African Americans, well, you know, if we didn't have Donald Trump in there all these years, these past 4 years, our country would not be where it is as far as the racism and the racial oppression. I say to you this morning, I agree completely that he's done a lot to fire and stoke the flames, but what he has also done is given those people an opportunity who believe like he does that racism is okay, that racial oppression is all right. On the election, there was 6 million people that voted for Donald Trump. That's a fair amount of people, 6 million, that said they think he's all right. Now, I say to you, especially as I speak in front of a church, what is the church's role going to look like in a post-Donald Trump era? What is this congregation going to look like? What is the Christian church going to look like after January 20th? Because not that Donald Trump was an excuse for the oppression and the racism that we have, but I believe many people said, well, once we get him out, then things will be back to normal. Well, I say to you this morning, in America, the new normal is not just getting Donald Trump out of the White House. That's a part of it. But the new normal has to be included, has to involve our attitudes about race and about racial oppression. And what can we do in that post-Donald Trump era as a church? And I know that this church is active on many fronts. Black Lives Matter, other activities and things that you've been involved in. But I say to you this morning, ask yourself, ask your council, ask your congregation, what is the role of this church in a post-Donald Trump America? What is that going to look like? How are we going to look at America without a Donald Trump? Are we going to still say, well, you know, those people, you know how they are. They're listening to Donald Trump, and many people are. But the point is, what is a post-Donald Trump era in America going to look like? And how can the church stand ground and affirm what that would look like and what that would be? 6 million people, as I said earlier, voted for Donald Trump. That's a fair amount of people. One of the things I do, I'm semi-retired, is I'm a chaplain with a group called Black String Triage Ensemble, and we play at crime scenes in Milwaukee County where people have been shot or killed. It's a string instrument group of people that come out and play, and I offer prayers. And I'll tell you, it took me at least 9 months to come to the realization that what I really needed to be to that Black String Triage Ensemble was an ally. That's the other point I want to make this morning. How can we, as members of this church and as members of people, a group who want to do better, how can we be allies to the Black Lives Matter movement or any other movement that you're involved with? What does that look like? What would that feel like if you said to yourself, well, anything I do, I want to be counted as an ally? I'll tell you that the Black String Triage Ensemble had to tell me that I was an ally. I didn't tell them. Too often we get involved in rallies and marches and demonstrations and other things, and that's good. We need to do that. But we need to be asking ourselves, how can I be seen as an ally? And what would that look like? How would it feel? Because what I see today in 2020 and 2021, I believe, as we move forward, is especially along the racial oppression and dealing with racism, we're going to have people that are very strong on character, but are very strong on saying that if I can't be an ally to you, then I really don't think I need to come. And that's going to require you to ask yourself, what gifts am I bringing to the table? Not that you come to the table that you know everything, but you need to be prepared when you come to the table of another organization, another group, to say, this is what I'm bringing. And if the group says they can't use it, then fine. But if they say they can use it, then how can you even get better at that gift that you have? Because we are entering into an age in America right now where even after COVID is under control, we have so many other social things that need to be looked at and addressed, especially in the area of racism and racial oppression. And I believe that the church, at one time, the church in America was on the forefront. And now I believe the churches, a lot of them are up front. There's a difference between being on the forefront and being up front. Up front, you have become an ally. Being up front, someone has told you in that organization that you're demonstrating with, that you're marching with, that we need you up front. And that makes a big difference. That can be frightening, though, because individually and collectively you have to ask yourself, am I willing to share these gifts that I have? And I'm not talking about financial gifts. That's the piece of it, but also resources, time, technology, whatever may be that the group needs that you know you have, and the group is struggling, as many groups are today and trying to figure out. And finally, in the area of how is my involvement in whatever it is, Black Lives Matter, or whatever it is, how is my involvement making a difference in feeling in the group's life? How is my involvement making a difference? Is it making a difference? If it's not, why isn't it? Because oftentimes we get involved in, many times we want to feel good, and that's good. But I think often, I've been reading a lot about the abolitionists that were around during the Civil War, that were working hard against the fight against slavery. And they would tell story after story after story about they were involved in a demonstration or trying to save someone from being lynched. That this one particular story that I was reading, this person said, it keeps feeling bad. It just keeps feeling bad and bad and bad. It doesn't feel good. And finally, this one person who was trying to escape slavery said, how do you think it feels to us? How do you think it feels to us? And I'm not saying that to make anybody feel guilty. That's not what I'm doing it. But we need to ask ourselves, how is my involvement in this organization making a difference? Is it making a difference? If not, then we need to go back to the table and say, I think I need to regroup and come back again after I've regrouped. But the final point here that I'm trying to make is that during this Advent season, we are all waiting for something. But sometimes along with the waiting, we have to be working too. We have to work to make those things come out that we want to come out the way we want them to. And that's not always easy. But that's part of the hard work that's involved. Amen, and thank you.
Split the Plate is one of UUCW's programs of outreach and generosity. It is one of the ways we live our UU values. 1/2 of all funds designated for Split the Plate are given to our partner organization for the month. For December, our Split the Plate partner is Waukesha Free Clinic, formerly known as St. Joseph Medical Clinic. Waukesha Free Clinic supports the health and well-being of the uninsured, underinsured, and low-income workers, members of our community who reside, work, or attend school in Waukesha County. They rely heavily on community donations and volunteer medical services to provide healthcare services for folks in need. We encourage you at this trying time for healthcare in our community to support the Waukesha Free Clinic by donating today. Go to our website and click on the donate button for Split the Plate or text your donation using the information here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Do Not Fear Agitation by Tanya Marquez. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings, and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. Shalom, blessed be, Ashe and Amen.